Hello, I am Avery or Hazel or Kylie. You can just pick one, I don't care.
Hello, I am Lily.
And what is your position on pizza?
Hmm, great.
Today on From the Closet, we are covering Soul. You will find a link in the description to purchase, rent, or stream the movie. Our links are centered around the U.S., but if you use the Just Watch app, it will redirect you to your country, and if you use the website, you will be able to change the country from the website page. Also in the
Yay!
link Also, in the description, you will find a link to Anchor.fm, which has links to the podcast on all other platforms and our socials, where you can get notified about episodes coming out.
Yeah, people who follow to our socials are really cool.
Yeah, really poggers. So yeah, before we get into this, I'm going to spin the wheel to determine what movie we are doing next.
Ooh, goody.
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Huh. Okay then.
Yeah, so yet again another movie that has been on the wheel since the beginning. But yeah, so join us next week for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Infinity Train Season 3. You can join us tomorrow for Star vs. the Forces of Evil Season 2.
Two parts.
Oh yeah, two parts cuz we already recorded that one and we had to split it up because it was getting too long. Um, But yeah, I think with that being said, there will be spoilers for Soul going forward. So if you haven't seen the movie, go watch it and come back.
The count's off.
Yeah. So with all of that shit out of the way, I feel like I have to say this. Soul feels like the opposite of a typical Pixar movie.
I'd like you to explain that a little bit more.
So most Pixar movies, I feel like they're made for kids, but adults can enjoy them.
So you're
I don't feel
yeah, that
like
makes
this movie is
sense.
made for kids.
Made for adults, but kids can enjoy them. Enjoy
Yeah,
it. I mean,
because
yeah, the deepest message as it gets, about purpose and life. Yeah,
yeah, I definitely, I feel like this was a movie that Pixar made for adults, which is weird because like it's the only movie I can think of where that's the case that they made it for adults. And
Pixar
then
woke up and decided, let's make a deep movie.
I mean, they make deep movies all the time, but this one just feels like it was targeted to adults. There was some controversy with this movie. It's all stupid, so um, it's
I
really not
remember,
worth diving too. Yeah, it's really not worth diving too deep into it. Some Christians were mad that it depicted the afterlife differently than how they imagined it, and
get
then
a light.
some
Sorry, what?
people, and then some people were mad that a white woman played the voice of a black man.
Which I'm just gonna outright say it, and they said it in the movie. 22 can be anything.
Yeah, which also that's one thing I do have a problem with about this movie is like they establish that 22 can use whatever voice they want, and then they use she/her pronouns for 22 in the movie.
I mean, I guess. I mean, she's the. Yeah, I'm gonna say it because she's the one that says, um, the voice may also pick the pronouns as well.
Maybe, but like it just kind of it just kind of felt weird to me. But anyway, I think with that out of the way, let's just talk about the movie in general. Um, so we briefly touched on this before we started recording, but there's the weird thing going on with the cat and the cat's soul.
Yeah.
So at some point, Joe jumps into the body of a cat, and that cat's soul ends up on the conveyor belt to the great beyond. And then later, when Joe is no longer in the cat's body, the cat's just alive again. I'm not sure if this is just a plot hole or a reference to the fact that a reference to the old saying that cats have 9 lives.
Wait, would that mean that they have 9 souls as well?
Yes.
I mean, in a cosmic sort of way, I can believe it.
Or is it just that is it Terry's or Jerry's?
Jerry's. Terry is the one
Okay.
that's, setting the count right.
Okay. So it could also just be that the Jerry's fixed it. Any of those works, really. Well, except for it being a genuine plot hole. That doesn't work. But yeah, so that's, I think, really the only major issue with the movie. Regarding how it fits in the Pixar theory, it was really weird, because we had to deal with Coco. But the idea is that, like, your belief controls what you see in the afterlife, just like how it works in the Percy Jackson universe. Although it's also implied that the Percy Jackson universe also has multiple afterlives on top of that, and that most people just end up in the Greek one.
Yeah, and Avery, I remember we talked about this a lot. And there was definitely one big issue that I had with that, with simplifying it to that way, is you can see that Joe Gardner isn't, well, freaked out by what he is seeing, and it's very hard to say that this is what Joe Gardner would think that he would have saw in his afterlife.
Yeah, see, and the thing that I said in response to that was that, like, Joe Gardner probably didn't follow a particular belief system about the afterlife, so therefore he sees what's actually there.
And
That was the conversation we had a long time ago. That was probably back in 2020 when the movie came out.
And I remember something that I said that I still hold as, want to say is what I believe it, is that the Coco afterlife is limbo.
Yeah, the way that the current Pixar theory describes it is like the Coco afterlife is basically a different version of the conveyor belt to the great beyond.
The way I see it is that Coco afterlife is limbo, and then when you're forgotten, then it's only then you're seeing that conveyor belt into the great beyond. But that's just how I see it.
Yeah, and then, like, we would also later see the monsters, or at least briefly, we would see something of how the monsters view the afterlife, but it's really not much. Frankly, it's almost nothing. But yeah, the Hall of Everything is a particularly interesting thing for the Pixar theory. because it secretly confirms that a lot of movies do actually take place in the same universe. Um, and like there are already solid connections anyway because we have like Riley actually being a character that we see in Finding Dory. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff too. Some guy actually made a video on YouTube like showing how you could actually connect every single Pixar movie or almost every single Pixar movie without using anything that the Pixar theory claims. And the Pixar theory still works on top of that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I might send that to you at some point, but not right now. And also they connected, like that video connects like fucking planes and some other stuff, I think.
Yeah.
And like
Planes is a weird movie.
Yeah, because
Made
that
by
one wasn't
Disney,
made by.
but in the Cars universe.
I actually don't really know for sure what studio made it because it wasn't Walt Disney Animation Studios. It was
Really?
one of their other studios.
Okay, so not. End of the day, it was not made by Pixar Animation Studios.
Right.
For a theoretical. For theater release by Pixar.
Yeah. Speaking of theater releases by Pixar, this wasn't one.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. This was during COVID, right?
Yeah. Good God, my headphone cord is getting really annoying. Okay, so this was one of 3 Pixar movies to not be released in theaters.
What are the other 2?
Turning Red and Luca. And we've already covered Turning Red, which you can find in the playlist. The playlist is linked down below if you're listening to this on YouTube. And if you're listening to this on any other platform, just click the name of the podcast and it should take you to it. But yeah, this came out on Christmas Day in 2020. So COVID was still very much like a massive thing. We're seeing a weird rise in COVID now, but it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be. And I'm certainly grateful for that. But this was a nice little Christmas present to get, especially since, like, unlike what Disney did with, like, Raya and the Last Dragon and some other stuff, this movie was, like, just free with your Disney Plus subscription, and you didn't have to pay extra for it.
Yeah, what they did with Raya was dirty.
Yeah.
Pixar out here giving us Christmas gifts.
Yeah, like all 3 of the Pixar movies that were released, like just straight to Disney Plus, they didn't charge you extra for any of them. So that was really cool.
It was.
I don't think that I watched this movie the day it came out.
I do know
that. I do know that later. I did watch it with my sister, but that was for sure after I'd already seen it once. And also that was for sure after Luca came out because we wanted to watch both, but we just didn't have time. And we are going to cover Luca eventually.
It'd be funny if that was the wheel landed on.
Yeah, that would have been funny. Okay, so what are things that you would like to say about this movie real quick?
I think you should already know. Jazz.
You know, like, we're both musicians, so I think we both have like an appreciation for like how this movie like revolves around music in a little bit of a sense.
Yeah. So
Um,
you're a pianist. I'm I play the clarinet, but I also was like in jazz. Like that was my thing. I loved doing like jazz clarinet, despite how
what
unpopular it was.
what did you think of the opening, like the Disney logo music in this?
Oh, I loved it. I hated it because, it was all bad. In fact, okay, so this is actually, I think I said before in our Tangled episode, I went to Disneyland and was able to. So, with my band, there's something called Imagination Studio, which you bring your instruments, or in the choir's case, their whole selves, and you get seated in a professional recording studio with a professional conductor, and they teach you along lessons, and you are actually recording Disney music, like how they would in a feature-length film.
See, sorry to like cut you off here, but like when you said the choir like had to bring their whole selves, I just imagined like somebody getting kicked out because they didn't bring their arm or something.
So, and the first thing that they had us do was the Walt Disney logo.
Hmm.
And I didn't go the first year, like, so the band goes every 2 years. So my freshman year, I didn't go, but I remember it was not good. So I just imagine that's how it went. Just doing the Walt Disney logo badly.
Oh my God, my headphone cord is literally like fucking up every other word.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. It's just that your audio keeps getting bled into my audio.
Well, hopefully I'm loud enough that it doesn't matter.
But yeah, I love that
Yeah,
it's bad
like when you
because
asked me
like it's
that
a middle
question,
school band.
sorry, when you asked me that question, I remembered as like, oh yeah, it's changed into like more of a jazz, like, full band. It's like, I loved it that I remembered a bit more. It's like, wait a minute, that was supposed to reflect the actual band that Joe Gardner was conducting. Oh, right. That band was awful.
Yeah, because it was a bunch of middle schoolers. Um,
Oh, I remember at least my 8th grade band was a whole lot better than that.
I remember my school band being just awful all around. I've told you stories about that before.
Yeah, but I mean, the band that I played with, in my senior year of high school, won first place at state, so.
See, I don't even know that
Yeah,
Alabama has state band competitions.
I just know that Oregon does. They appreciate the arts.
Clearly. But anyway, so regarding this movie, There's also the whole joke that people have pointed out that like 22 couldn't find a reason to want to live until she had lived. So it's a catch 22. Haha, see what you did there, Pixar. Love the whole
What?
concept of the zone, how we actually see Joe go into the zone early in the movie, and we don't know what it is until later.
Yeah. So something I kept thinking about is, at least in jazz, you're
You
if
kept
you're going to
thinking about
be
something?
doing that sort of improvisations, you're not just going into the zone, not listening to anything around you. The thing about jazz is you're constantly listening to things around you. You're responding to the drummer. You're responding to the bass. You're responding. You're matching what they do, and then call it. It's all call and response.
Yeah, but like the only times we actually see Joe go into the zone is either when he's playing alone or when he stops paying attention to the other people around him. Like we
So
actually
one of
see
the
him
things
do
I
that.
yeah. So one of the things I don't really like about, and I'm just moving away from the movie for a second, just animated cartoons that try to touch up into music. They love to say that, you know, fuck the music, sheet music. If everyone just started playing what they wanted to, it sounds good. Because everyone should do what they want to, no rules. I've seen quite a few TV shows that like to go to that conclusion, and it's not right.
Okay, so I think it's more of like these people are good enough at music and good enough at playing off of other people that they don't need to rely on sheet music and they can just work off of each other. That's not the case
In
for
this
like,
situation, it's perfect. In
yeah,
other TV shows, it drives me up a wall.
yeah. Like, I would say it was also perfect, like in Back to the Future, when like Marty just gave a couple of instructions to a band, and that was all they needed, and it was fine because you understood that the band was good enough to be able to play off of what he was doing.
Yeah, I s- and I said it before in this podcast. I have like you know two a brother and a sister, so I just randomly hear what they're watching. Mickey Mouse and what all of that. Mickey Mouse is the worst offender to things I'm saying right now,
The amount of
at least
crimes
to what
Mickey
I've
Mouse
seen.
has the amount of crimes Mickey Mouse has committed is too many.
It's so sad that they're showing this megalomaniac to children.
But yeah, so I also love that like you could go. It shows that like it's not just musicians who get into the zone. I felt that when what was his name, Moonwind. I felt it when he said like he became a lost soul playing Tetris. Because like I'm really good at Tetris myself, even though like I haven't played in a while. Um, so yeah, like I totally get it. How good are you at Tetris?
um, Good enough to not. I don't totally suck.
Have you ever won in Tetris 99?
No. Mostly because I
Uh,
don't play enough, and when I do, I don't lose. I don't win.
okay, I'd say I've won more than a couple of times in 99, but now I don't have Nintendo Switch Online, so I can't play it. Well, I can play some of the other modes, just not the online ones.
Okay, I want to bring up to the point. One of my favorite jokes is that when they were watching the Mentor video, the soul that was megalomaniac that is intensely opportunistic.
Yeah, like my immediate thought process was like, Hitler?
Yeah, or I mean, I guess it's any. I think it's a stand-in for really any sort of terrible person throughout history.
Yeah, but like also the thing about this, like the thing that this establishes too is that like um the Jerrys don't distinguish between good and evil. They're like completely impartial and they throw souls into like they give souls personality traits at random, it seems.
Yeah, I would even say that when they're throwing someone like aloof or I forgot which. And later in the movies, they're throwing souls into different personalities. Like, we should really stop, throwing so many in there.
Yeah. It was it was definitely one of those things where it's like clearly they're meant to be impartial or their job is to make it random,
Yeah,
which
because
truly only the human mind is capable of generating randomness. So this kind of makes sense why it's not automated by a robot.
I mean, I feel like the Jerrys are the closest thing that the Pixar universe has to a god.
No?
You have a closer thing?
Yeah, recall in Turning Red,
Hmm. I guess that's
it,
true.
it yeah, it's explicitly stated that like Sun Yi or Su Yi or whatever her name was, like was gifted the power to turn into a red panda by a god.
The Jerrys are like, oh, you want to turn into a red panda? Sure, why not? I don't actually think that's what happened, but it'd be funny if it did.
It would be really funny if it was. Yeah. Um,
Oh, I think we haven't talked about Jerry enough. And the Terrys, because I love like the little flat animation that they did.
I do too. Like it was really cool seeing like although I do have some questions because there was a heart monitor that was not plugged in that was beeping. Um, and then we see Jerry or Terry in it.
It operates off of batteries.
Yeah, but it also wasn't plugged into a patient.
Oh,
So
it was
it
plugged into
shouldn't have.
Terry.
But yeah, it that was a little. That's just a minor nitpick. It doesn't really matter. I just thought it was weird.
DVD screensavers. This particular heart monitor had that.
You know, that's another thing too. Like with heart monitors, the thing that really annoys me is when whenever you see a heart monitor in like TV shows or movies and a character dies, it does that long, like stretched out
He,
beep.
yeah,
That's not realistic. It actually just stops making noise altogether.
his.
It's only supposed to make that long beep if it becomes unplugged from the patient.
Oh, that makes sense. So I guess it would be more accurate if the patient just straight up left, then it make that long beep.
Yeah.
There's at least one situation in media where the patient just straight up left, and then
Yeah,
make
this
that
one.
beep.
And it doesn't
Honestly,
do
that's
it.
aw.
um, back on like pianos and stuff, from what I've heard, the piano is animated correctly in this movie every time we see it, which is something that we can't say for a lot of animation. They don't
It,
bother.
it's true, but um, have you seen the stuff with Encanto? Encanto? That's it. Um,
Yeah, I've seen some of it, but like it's kind of hard to judge whether the piano is animated correctly there because we're
well,
looking at it from a side angle.
it's not just the piano; it's how they got their shots. Because I've seen a lot of videos of where you can see the dancers that gave the inspiration to the actual um, animation, especially the dancers that go around Mirabelle, and then how that gets transferred into the rough sketch, and then how that gets transferred into the final take of the animation. So I
Hmm.
believe they would have something like that here, where they're getting actual people to do these one of a kind shots, and they animate that.
So, from what I heard, they actually filmed somebody playing the piano from multiple different angles so that the animators could animate it correctly.
Yeah, they do that with playing piano. They do that with dancing. Dancing is a big one, and one that they used a lot with Encanto. Make sure
Yeah,
that
so
dancing is just right.
something similar we'll see later when we cover Ruby. A lot of the fight scenes are motion capture,
Huh.
where like they capture people actually performing the moves that we see in the fights, or at least something similar. Um, they do some impossible shit later, but usually it's a animation on top of motion capture for Ruby fight scenes.
Yeah, Pixar, Disney love doing that. They love making references, having their references be, humans doing their animation, and then just animating that.
Yeah, and then like with Avatar: The Last Airbender, that was like mostly hand drawn animation. So they actually taught the animators martial arts so
Hmm,
that they would
beautiful.
know how to do yeah, so like they would know how to do the moves themselves so that they could then animate them. Like there's a lot of different animation techniques and then like I don't know, like I didn't my filmmaker brain was not on for this movie, so I didn't think about the sound design at all. Um, and I guess since my filmmaker brain wasn't on and I didn't notice any particular sound design things, that must mean that the sound design in this movie was amazing.
Yeah. Oh, one of my favorite tracks from this movie is whenever Terry comes on. It's just
I didn't
like
notice the
it.
score all that much. Um,
Well, specifically Terry is more like it's a void. His soundtrack is a lot left to be desired, and that's the point. I don't know. It fits to someone who is destined to count souls that enter the afterlife.
God, that must be torture. And then
No,
like people were talking about like all the times that the count could be off throughout all of like the Pixar universe, if you believe in the Pixar theory. Mordu is a very clear one, and it's likely the one that like where the count was off centuries ago. That's likely what they were referencing. You've seen Onward, right?
Yeah, of course. That's the last movie I seen with my in theaters before COVID.
Yeah, it was also the last movie I watched in theaters before COVID. But the last movie I watched in theaters recently was Thor: Love and Thunder. Um, but with Onward, the count would have been off again because like Ian and Barley, I believe his name was, brought their dad back.
Oh God, wait a minute.
But it's likely that there is a different thing for either the Great Before has multiple portals for like other planets, which would be very weird, or there's a different Great Before for wherever Ian and Barley live.
I would say at least there's different sections of the Great Before. So, like, the Jerrys are in charge of, the Earth Great Before. And then there might be a separate entities that are for other places. If
Yeah,
you
and
get to the
then
Great Beyond, there might be more Terrys.
and then there's the question of like what happens when the humans leave Earth. Like I think obviously it makes sense that like in the context of the Pixar theory, then they're the ones giving the souls to cars. Which holy shit, that's actually a better explanation for how the cars come to life in the first place. Um,
So, what we see in the Great Before and Great Beyond is just one giant glowing ball.
I've heard it called the existential bug zapper.
Nah, I think it's just like forming a greater conscience or whatever.
Nah, I prefer existential bug zapper.
You would.
I can't help it. It's so beautiful.
You can't see it,
So
I'm nodding my head.
if you didn't get that reference, you haven't seen every Pixar movie.
How dare you?
But yeah, regarding things that are in every Pixar movie, I don't remember where A113 is. The
Oh,
voice of John Ratzenberger is not in this movie, but there is an animated version of him that like appears in this movie. I think it's during the office scene, but I could be wrong. But also in the office scene is the Chinese takeout box. Um, the scene where that guy is like, "Oh, what am I doing with my life?" and then he just knocks everything off the table and runs off. That's where we see the Chinese takeout box. I'm not sure about the Pizza Planet truck, um, but it wouldn't
Pizza
surprise
Planet
me if it
truck
was in the background
is in the Hall
somewhere.
of Everything.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, the Pizza
There was a
Planet truck
lot of
is.
stuff in. There was a lot of stuff in the Hall of Everything. Because like we saw the Axiom, we saw the broccoli pizza from Inside Out.
The
We
same.
saw. Go ahead.
Yeah, um, I don't know if you can really call that A113 because it is a very blurry picture that I'm seeing this from.
Yeah. I mean, I can go back and look. Chances are Cinema Wins pointed it out if they did a video on this movie. Um, but yeah, I could go back and look later. But yeah, back on the Hall of Everything, there's also like Merida's bow and arrows and the targets from Brave, and they're very clearly the same ones. And I can't even remember what else is there. There's just a lot of references in that one area. And then there's also
Okay,
in the list of 22's mentors, there's Luxo Jr.
I
That
wonder
is
how
the
that
most
mentorship went.
yeah, that is the one confusing. That's the most confusing because I think that can't like that kind of canonizes the Luxo Jr. short, and there have been people working on tying in all the Pixar shorts into the Pixar theory. Good luck, because that is a very daunting task.
I hope you like Cars.
Oh yeah, but I feel like Cars are the easiest ones to do. Same with like
Yeah, but
22
I mean,
versus Earth and Jack Jack Attack.
still, there's a lot of car shorts.
Too many. They milked that franchise way too much, and it wasn't even a good franchise to start with.
Makes sense why they started milking Toy Story now. If
I
you're gonna milk
kind of
something,
hope
at
they're
least milk
done.
something good.
I kind of hope they're done with Toy Story.
I hope so too, but I can't exactly say I don't expect them to at least be thinking about Toy Story 5.
God. And like Toy Story 4 should have like in my opinion and in many other people's opinion, Toy Story 4 should have just been called Woody because it goes against whatever the a lot of what the other Toy Story movies kind of established. It
Yeah,
doesn't it's not like it doesn't make sense. It's just like calling it Toy Story feels a bit disingenuous.
it goes against the theme of Toy Story.
Yeah. But yeah, this movie was really great. It is a bit hard to watch at times for me because you know what? Actually, I don't want to talk about that.
Hmm. Okay. At least for me, I think I referenced it briefly, but I watched this yesterday, and I just wanted to get on it immediately. I do really love this movie.
Yeah, I do too.
When it comes to Pixar movies, I would actually put on the topper half of Pixar.
Yeah, I'd probably say the same. Um, well, I don't know. Maybe Pixar's got a lot of good movies. I
It's
think
true,
the
but
I think the
Soul
bottom
for
half
me.
consists. I think the bottom half consists of absolutely all three Cars movies, The Good Dinosaur, Incredibles 2, but I'm not sure what. Maybe Finding Dory, even though Finding Dory is not really bad, it's just it was kind of unnecessary. Same with
I
Monsters
mean,
University.
at the very, you have to admit that with how many bangers Pixar has, you would have to put even some good movies in the bottom half because you know how many movies they've released and how many were good.
I mean, the way I see it, Pixar's only ever made one bad movie, and that was Cars 2. All the others
Mhm.
are okay at worst.
Like you, actually, how many Pixar movies have there been made? At least 25.
26.
Yeah. Wait, I believe this is right. When was um? So you're gonna have to confirm this for me. Soul was the 22nd movie, right?
Let's see. Turning Red was 25, uh, which makes Luca 24, which makes Soul 23.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess you're right. All I just want to look at all Pixar movies. Because there's a Wikipedia for this. Because there's a Wikipedia for everything. Damn, should have
Yeah,
been 22.
that would have been some nice, like, poetry, I guess.
But I think we already have enough nice poetry with what happens in the movie. So 22 to get the Earth Pass 22 to find 22 Spark, we need to go down to Earth. But to go down to Earth, you need an Earth Pass.
Yeah. Like, she couldn't find a reason.
catch-22.
Yeah. I mentioned that earlier in this podcast.
I just love that. No, it's just a catch-22 right there.
Yeah. But I think with all that being said, do you have any like final closing thoughts before we look at the critic ratings?
Movie good.
Yes, movie good. Christian's bad. Specifically,
No,
specifically bad for hating on this movie.
yeah, I specifically think Christian moms would rage on this movie.
Yeah. And like I'm saying this as a Christian myself. Modern Christianity is not what it's cracked up to be. So anyway, regarding the critic reception of this movie, IMDb gives this movie an 8 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes gives it 95%. Letterboxd, I've never seen this one before. Yeah, Letterboxd gives it a 4 out of 5.
Makes sense.
Then 90% of Google users liked this movie.
Yeah, good job, Google users. 8.5.
I'm giving this movie probably 8.7. So yeah, join us tomorrow for Star vs. the Forces of Evil Season 2. Join us next week for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Infinity Train Season 3. And with all that being said, I've been Avery, that's been Lily, and I've only been a person for an hour, and even I know that's a bad idea.